Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed and today we are in the midwifery book. If you're watching this on YouTube, you might be thinking, of course we're in the midwifery book. That's what the whole playlist is. If you're watching on Twitch, thank you for joining me. Feel free to add questions, comments, thoughts in the chat section. If you want to participate and you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel on either YouTube or Twitch, and then you'll get a notification when we go live and you can jump into the chat. All right, let's jump in. We're in the second chapter of the Orange Sutra. So let's remind ourselves of the opening paragraph of this chapter. Reorient ourselves once more, because this opening section is pretty great. It is entirely possible to verify for oneself that we are part of a caring and intelligible universe. The verification is a kind of proof, since it is a way of understanding that is based upon the realization that our mind constantly communicates with us and for our benefit. Wow. The communications from the mind are as profound as they are utterly appropriate to our circumstances. For while the scope of the mind is pervasive, its precision is always directed to what is personally significant. All of this is something that you are able to verify and understand, provided you develop a new way of understanding. That's what we're doing here. We will demonstrate that our choice of goals, the problems we face, the daydreams or fantasies we have, and the dreams that visit us in our sleep, each and every one of them are like doorways into the richest source of insights into our life. What we discover through these insights is that the mind itself provides ample evidence of its own goodness and intelligibility. So that's what we're on the hunt for. We're on the hunt to understand and verify, prove for ourselves that this reality we find ourselves in is an all-pervasive intelligence we can call mind that is both understandable and knowable, intelligible, and is itself good, and is using that intelligibility, intelligence, wisdom to extend goodness to us at all times, provided we learn the language so that we can listen and unpack the messages. That's the game we're in. So, those messages could be about fundamentally two kinds of things: either your highest goals and helping you to reach them, or why you have set your goals less than your highest. Less than your highest, purest, most personally significant goals. Why have you set it less? Because that's a block. You can do better. Mind wants you to do better. Or why are you failing to reach those goals in the way that you would most like to reach them with excellence? So it's either communicating to us about our highest goals or what blocks us from them. And that's what we're looking at now. What is it that what is the pathway to our highest goals? The self-logos. What is it that blocks that development? The pathologos. So this chapter is called the pathologos, and we are about halfway through, and we are on section 6 of chapter 2, the struggle over discussing the pathologos. And we've been talking about this as a kind of return home, like the hero's journey, the archetype of many narratives, many myths. Only we are putting forward the idea that perhaps this is the true archetype of the hero's journey. Anyway, part of that journey is the return home, or closing the loop. Our desire for mature relationships with those we love draw us to dialogue meaningfully with parents and authorities. In philosophical midwifery, we call this a return to one's roots, a return home once again. For to complete this cycle is to bring an end to the pathologos. In that victory, we become heroes. True heroes. Because we know something about what it takes to become rational. We're learning about what it takes to become rational because we went through that journey ourselves. And so we have closed the loop, completed what most needed completion. Notice the language, what most needed completion. You can hierarchically arrange the kinds of activities or goals human beings can have, and freeing ourselves from the pathologos, the cause of our problems, within ourself, how we relate to ourselves in reality, and how we relate and function towards others, the cause of problems that manifest in all of those ways, addressing and freeing ourselves from that problem, or that cause of our problems, is number one. What most needed completion. Now you might be clever and say, well, actually, learning the logos, which is what we do when we read the Balboa version of Socrates, the Balboa translation of the actual words of Socrates. You might say, well, that also is number one. Because you kind of have to do two together. If your goals are the highest, eventually they'll become about your mind. And eventually they'll become about yourself. And eventually you'll want to do good and benefit people in whatever it is you want to do with excellence. If you are constantly setting the highest, most meaningful and pure goals that you can be reaching. Well, to understand mind, to understand self, to understand what benefits, to understand the good. Well, that's the logos. That's what we do when we read Socrates. Also learning the dialectic over there. Both Pierre Grimes and Socrates seem to be singing the same song. It's the dialectic. Applied to what's true is philosophy. Applied to what's false is midwifery. So, if they're complementary, in other words, to surface the extent of your problem, you have to be reaching for the top, which will become philosophy. In other words, if you're not seeking philosophical goals to know and understand yourself and your purpose, then you might not surface the entirety of your pathologos, which is needed to become free. Likewise, in order to free ourselves from our problem, we use a language. We use the logos language. We talk about things like beauty and justice. We ask questions, which is the dialectic, and we judge the appearance of beauty and justice that we see in our pathologos origin scenes against the truth of beauty and justice to see that it's not true and therefore not believable. So the more that we understand the truth of those kinds of things, justice itself, beauty itself, mind itself, the easier it is to make that comparison and judgment. So again, the two are complementary. Still, you might say, well, yeah, okay, I think we've exhausted that line of thought. We've closed the loop and completed what is most needed completion. To be able to dialogue meaningfully with those people who created the conditions for your false beliefs that caused your problems. There is a beauty and a sense of intrinsic correctness in the decision to re-examine the early Pathologos scenes and to discuss them. With those who played out their convincing roles within those scenes. In discussions with them, we can discover how these early scenes in our life led to the false beliefs about ourselves. Through sharing with them, they can realize the depth and shaping power of the Pathologos scenes. For there is no reason why the process cannot be reversed, since passing into the Pathologos is like falling asleep, and waking up is to move from the sleepwalking Pathologos to the awakened Logos. Let's continue, which means I need my highlighter. Once families and clans accept accept the decisive part they played, they can then play a more vital role in the development of their own destiny. How's that for a thing to say? So this return to discuss what you have discovered about the role that they played, the impact it had on your life, and the impact it has on the lives of all people who happen to function with this false belief in a negative, tragic way, can allow them, if they have the integrity to acknowledge it and accept it, they have integrity, they seek truth and benefit, then they are being invited to be able to play a more vital role in the development of their own destiny. They can become free of these chains. If they accept this challenge, it's a challenge, an invitation, and work with all the members of the group, it is inevitable that they will find ways to cultivate a Pathologos-free environment. That's the goal. Anyone who's ever lived in a house with other people wish to fucking God that these human beings where they share a space with take up this invitation. So they're not a sleepwalking zombie seeking the destruction of their own self and the self and development of others. In whatever ways. Remember we talked about intimidation. In this zombie Pathologos state, people will look for mistakes others make so that they can use those mistakes to verify or justify the negative image of other people that's a projection from their own injustice, from their own Pathologos that they are suffering from. Clip chimping, but in real life. That's intimidation. Look, you did something wrong. That means that you suck. Oh, and also I get to punish you in whatever way. Now, it's no coincidence that the way in which people in this Pathologos zombie state seek to punish is the exact same sort of abuse and insult to their self that they suffered. People do to others what was done to themselves. What does that mean? So if that's the sort of zombie Pathologos state human beings are in, why would you want to live around one? Because at any time, especially if there's something meaningful happening or they are pursuing their most meaningful goals, or maybe they're just tired, or just any reason, maybe they feel good about themselves, they can slip into this Pathologos mode to project the kind of abuse onto you that they themselves suffered. They know that they're doing it, they don't know why they're doing it, and that's their moral obligation. To do what you can to discover and remove the most insidious, what was the word? Pernicious? There's a word that came up in the text. We nurse a sullen fury at that injustice, and so we need to go back and solve it. We nurse an anger like Achilles in the story of Achilles, because the story of Achilles is somebody going through midwifery, the worst person going through midwifery to become the best person. So that's the significance of midwifery, and that tells us that this is something that human beings used to know. Before, of course, the Dark Ages, where everything went to shit for a long time. And we are still pulling ourselves out of the Dark Ages. Unfortunately, we are pulling ourselves out with a way of thinking and learning based on the Roman model. Aristotelian thinking. Aristotle taught Alexander the Great and so on. But it's the Roman way of thinking which doesn't have the key words of the Greek education that will allow us to do what we need to do. In other words, it keeps us trapped below the line. What's the line? Let's put the line on the board. One of the last episodes, we asked the question, what happened between Socrates and now? Or Socrates and Aristotle, if we have inherited Aristotle's way of thinking and learning. So, education, education. Another way of understanding that is causes. How do we understand? If you are learning something, you are learning about the causes of the thing. Yes, its parts and how it functions, but how is it caused? How do we understand? How do you make the thing? What causes the thing? What's the purpose for the thing? What's the intention for the thing? How do we understand? How do things work? Causes. Now, we've got a line. So below the line we have Aristotelian cause. Aristotle, Elian causes, and you can also say within that that's materialism. Also materialism. Aristotle liked to put things into test tubes, and we can also say this is the Roman tradition. And above that we have we could call it the Socratic or the anagogic. Anagogic means upward moving. Or we could just say the self-logos causes. The causes that will also come up as objects of reflection, things that have to be addressed in our reflection. So as soon as you discover that there is such a thing as the self-logos, there is an understandable, intelligible, and caring, all-pervasive intelligence, as we read in the opening. If we acknowledge that, then we could call this, what do we call this? Socratic, if you want, or the Greek. Oh, we could call this perennial philosophy, even better. It's the parent, perennial. It's the philosophy before, when it was one. Okay, in this tradition, there is no one. There's no one. There's no one way of understanding reality. There's no truth. It's all a matter of opinions based on physical senses. So that's the way that we are taught today. If you go and study philosophy, you're learning this, which is directly opposed to this, which is ironic because philosophy is this. Philosophy is specifically the movement through here. It's not even the movement to here. Formally, that's philomathesis. That's a prelude to philosophy. Only after you've discovered that there is another realm called the realm of pure being, or there's an intelligence that's not a matter of opinion and beliefs, then is the traveling through this. That's true philosophy. Which is ironic because this whole level is taught to not exist at currently modern Roman-based educational facilities, Western education. So what? So this gives us what we need to create problems. This is what is needed to solve problems. This is what we're learning in the book. It's the absence and the rejection of this that is allowing our problems to maintain and allowing us to be still fighting Nazis. I gotta replace that laugh. I keep hitting the laugh instead of the boo. They're poorly ordered sound effects. I can't hit laugh. When I talk about the fact that
no one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
When we aren't let me fix this. When I talk about the fact that we aren't learning and we're still fighting Nazis, we shouldn't laugh at that. We should instead and play this sound. For Nazis, that's better. Okay, so, and this is what we are hoping to remedy for our own souls. If you've come across this channel, good for you. You are being introduced to what you need to solve your problems and contribute to humanity solving its problems, which would be lovely. But it's for ourselves primarily. It's our job. Pernicious. We have a moral obligation to remove the pernicious, sinister parasite that causes us to act like a zombie that crushes not the brains, we're not eating brains, we're crushing the soul, the self, and the self-development through the self-logos of other people as a zombie until we go back and we address our own pathologos. So, if anything is worth doing, it's this one. In fact, the text just said it was the most important thing that we can do. So let's do it. Perennial philosophy. Okay, so before it was many different opinions, it was just one. And of course it is. If you have a toaster and, I don't know, I don't know what's in a toaster. The motherboard, the fuse. When you blow a fuse in your toaster, there aren't many different opinions on how to fix the toaster, how to solve the problem of the toaster. There's just one, which is why you can become an electrician and fix toasters. So too, if it's not a toaster, but something even more important, like the world, or your soul, like your soul, this is your soul. Oh, there's only one eye in the soul. I'm smiling. Or the world, Australia, New Zealand, whatever happens over here, Japan. Over here we've got Canada and America. See, whether it's the soul of the world, same thing applies. Is it actually a thing, or can you be like Donald Trump and Elon Musk and all of the Republicans and fascists and just lie? Well, it's my opinion that planes are falling out of the sky because of other groups, other families that look and act different than me. Black families, brown families. The most baby brain, but also the most pathologos. It's pathologos, bright and clear. Oh, all the fascists, Republicans, small-minded people who are literally destroying the planet for their own short-term personal gain and do not care about other people. They are marketing, their whole marketing department to get away with this shit is to appeal to your pathologos. People from different clans who look different than you, They're the cause of your problems. They're the bad people. That's what they're doing. But if, of course, we don't use the worst people as the model. But by the way, if this is a thing that exists and they say, oh, there are many different opinions, we say, no. You can't. It's just not my opinion. You're way out of a genocide in Palestine right now. It's my opinion. It's not. We had a chatter in here once who said this. It's my opinion that it's not actually a genocide that America and Israel are committing right now against the Palestinian people. It's my opinion that it's not actually. Who cares? That's opinions. Opinions are for doofuses. No, that's not fair. We can still have opinions or whatever, but when it's opinions about important things that matter, we want to go beyond opinions to truth and understanding. That's perennial philosophy. So what we are learning isn't Socrates' opinion or Parmenides' opinion or Homer's opinion or Plotinus' opinion or Proclus's opinion. These are all very intelligent people who all have the same outlook, not because they're in the same team, but because it's true. They're all electricians. They can all fix a toaster. Only the toaster is the soul and the world. That's what perennial philosophy means. As opposed to materialism, which is Roman, whereas the perennial philosophy we can say is the Greek. Up until the Dark Ages, and you can wonder what happened at the beginning of the Dark Ages, 200 and 300 and something. Can't remember the date. Tradition. Greek tradition. So what are the different causes? Well, we're talking about the line. The line goes here. Aristotelian causes and the self-logos causes. Now, normally we think of... So this is our education. So how do we learn to understand the world? Well, we have material things. Material things. Material causes. So today I heard a interview on, I think it was Joe Rogan or one of those right-wing propaganda networks, where there was this billionaire justifying capitalism, and he said, well, capitalism is we're all competing against each other. Let's ignore that. The fact that why the fuck are we competing? Sorry, I shouldn't be swearing. It's just so stupid. So stupid. Why the heck are we competing against each other for things like healthcare, rent, food, a planet to live on, air to breathe? Those shouldn't be things you win and lose. Remember, if it's a competition, then only one person wins. Everyone else, 99.9% loses. That's what competition means. Only one person can win the tennis championship, or only one team can win the Super Bowl, or one person can win the MVP. Fine if it's a game to win a trophy, but if it's real life, that's stupid. Anyway, ignoring that, we're competing against each other, and the winners forget the implications of, well, what if 99% of us lose, which is what we're suffering from? My rent's doubled in a couple of years. More than doubled. Grocery prices have doubled. What the fuck? Anyway, we are competing based on how good we can make stuff. How good we can make stuff. Therefore, it's the best system. Don't question capitalism. And of course, Joe Rogan didn't, because he never questions anyone on his show. That's why he's paid millions of dollars to be a propaganda mouthpiece for the people, saying the worst things to convince people to think and act against their own interests. He never questions anything. He doesn't know how to think properly. he hasn't crossed this line into the self-logos that's where you learn how to think. Anyway, material causes. Stuff. They think it's all about making stuff. Man, the maker. Here is some stuff we make. Weapons of mass destruction. Neat? Or not neat? Nuclear weapons. Neat? Not neat. Anyway, material causes. So, and then of course we need a builder. Let's use building a house for an example. You need wood to build a house. You need a builder. You need blueprints. And I won't fill out the whole list because you can do it yourself. I mean, and because it's a puzzle for you to wonder about and think about and contemplate when you have a spare moment. Or all day, if you want. Okay? So these are the physical causes. That's our education. These are sufficient. This way of thinking is sufficient to create the pathologos, to create problems. What it is not sufficient for is removing them. Why? Because you got to cross this line. Self-logos line here. So that's the line we're talking about. So what's interesting about the logos is its symmetrical reflections in its creation of reality. In other words, we've been talking about an all-pervasive mind that is communicating to us at each moment for our benefit. Our job is to learn how to listen and pay attention, follow the logos. This intelligence is itself reflected on, this is the Timaeus of, by the way, the book Timaeus, reflects on itself as the model to generate the physical world. And then again into our false beliefs about the physical world. And then there's another reflection into even a separation from that, nihilism. And of course, where did this come from? It's reflections all the way down. So let's not go too far into that. But the point is, there is a reflective nature in the logos, allowing us to have analogy, allowing us to move from here, which is where we were born, into here. Why? Reflection. What does that mean? Okay, first chatter for the day, and it's spam. Because, so the idea of reflection generates analogies, meaning for each one of these causes, 1, 2, 3, you can find 1, 2, 3, 4, however many there are, 4, 5 maybe, let's leave that open, in the Greek tradition. Okay, so what is the blueprints? What's the model? We call that the paradigm. The equivalent of the builder. Well, who uses the paradigm? Which is mind itself. That model that is used in creation is also the model used, or mind or being, pure being, or the brilliant light. Just say being for now. Who uses that as a blueprint in how they function? The dialectician, or the midwife. The philosophical midwife. Who do they use this paradigm skillfully and artfully on? Not wood and bricks like a builder, but on something else. By the way, question mark. I'm leaving it up to you to fill out this list and fill out this list. because that's the activity. By the way, we've been talking about how this all learning is fundamentally the dialectic. Yesterday's episode, it came up again when we were talking, time of recording, Mino episode. I'll timestamp it. I'll find it. 38. Mino episode 38. We go into it in more depth, but essentially it's the same thing we've been seeing over and over again. It's the dialectic. The dialectic is what we're learning to know how to understand, to know how to define, to know how to communicate, to know how to extend benefit in the best possible way. Even those who have a natural intelligence and a natural good heart and a natural charm, and there are people out there who are like that, and it's amazing to see, even they are on the cusp of learning the dialectic, or even they could do better, more artful, more conscious about the great work that they're doing if they have the dialectic. So what? So our question would be, can we take the list of causes, both negative Aristotelian causes, the Roman tradition, the modern way of understanding philosophy, misunderstanding philosophy, materialism, the negatives, and the positives with the self-logos causes, and see how they fit within the dialectic. If the dialectic is the paradigm of the logos, the paradigmatic structure, or the paradigm, the model, the blueprints, but not for houses, but for what? Souls, the self. By the way, those who haven't crossed the line, capitalists, materialists, that guy we were talking about, hey, people who should have all the stuff are the people who are best at making stuff, because that's all there is, stuff. But what about the feelings of your workers? I don't believe that they have feelings. I don't care about their feelings, says Trump, says a fascist, says Hitler, says Elon Musk, all those people. Materialists, people who are interested in money, they don't care about this. The soul, the mind, the self, the material cause above the line. That's far more important than bricks and wood. All they care about is bricks and wood. They want more oil. They're willing to murder Palestinians so that they can do a genocide so they can have a foothold where they can extract physical stuff like oil and steal gold and all sorts of material things. And they don't care that it's a genocide because they value the material causes. They don't see the world this way. So they'll be confused when you say, hey, how about having some empathy? Oh, and by the way, the system is under this line. That's our tradition. Meaning the people who are going to do well are these people. Therefore, almost all of the politicians and the big CEOs, the billionaires, are sociopaths. Meaning they have no care for this. The soul, the well-being, the happiness, the feelings of anyone else outside their pathologos clan or their family. Because they're still a zombie to the pathologos. The zombie virus of the pathologos wants to maintain the zombie virus. So they see anyone different outside the clan as a threat or someone to be murdered or competed against or dominated or murdered or killed or exploited or whatever. So it's no surprise that the least empathetic, empathy is above this line because that's the soul here, and the least caring, again, we talk about the logos being necessary for care. It's a caring and intelligible universe. The least empathetic, the least intelligent people are the politicians and the CEOs, because that's the system. We have a system based on this kind of ignorance that can be traced to this guy, this tradition, and this way of thinking. That's the game we're in. Our job is to cross this line. And one way of doing it is wondering about the set of physical causes that most people think are the only set of causes, and wondering about what would happen if you added the self-logos in. because now you've got a whole different set of causes. And you can also wonder about, hang on a second, if there is a set of causes like this that has its reflection into the positive, allowing us to reach our goal as a dialectician and to help ourselves and others, but it also has a reflection into the negative, this is not true. This is a fundamental world truth that's false and harmful, objectively speaking, demonstrably speaking, then what is it that has this kind of reflection into two things? In other words, is there a cause above the reflection into here and here? What's that cause? And if it's the cause above all, if it's the one above all, if this the one above all, the one what? The one cause? Above all? How about this? If this is the self, an open and receptive self, willing to do their job, their purpose, their destiny, to free themselves from their pernicious pathologos, if that's a self. By the way, if the highest functioning of our self would be as a dialectician or midwife, that's the ideal of self. By the way, the paradigm, mind looking at itself, self-mind, the highest experience of self, these are all self. Of course it is, because we're adding self and logos. So therefore, in the same way, we have a set of causes that are positive and a set of causes that are negative. One to do with including mind and logos and self, one that rejects it. So there must be a cause above the all of the causes. Just as if these are all selves, there must be a one self above all. Here's a question: what causes that? Is there a name for this cause? So, one set of negatives, one set of positives, an activity for anybody watching to play for themselves, which is the game, which is wondering and curiosity and questions and solving the analogy. A number here, and then a question about over that one. Yeah, that's what we're doing, crossing the line. So when I talk about crossing the line, I'm talking about this line here, the line into the self-logos, or from the Roman to the Greek tradition, or from Aristotle back to Socrates. Just a reminder, I think I've got the notes up here still. Should have the notes up here. We did a little bit of a history lesson. Tracing these thinkers back from Aristotle, who our education is based on, back to his teacher. Here we go. Here's Aristotle, created the lineage for modern tradition, called the philosopher by moderns, but called by his teacher the brain, not the philosopher. Is there a difference between the soul and the brain? Could this difference in nicknames be quite telling, especially based on what we just saw about causes? And Aristotle, of course, taught Alexander the Great, a Roman. Let's make sure. Macedonian. His conquest paved the way for the Roman Empire. Interesting. Right, so anyone more interested in history can trace out that lineage better than I am wanting to do right now. But for history buffs, it could be interesting. Okay. Aristotle, before him, Plato, who started the first universities in the West. Before him, Socrates. Before Socrates, Parmenides. We have this dialogue between Socrates and the teacher Parmenides. It's fantastic. It's called The Greatest Book Never Read. We are reading it on this channel. We'll be going back to it soon because we've done the introduction, the first of the hypotheses, but we've got 8 more to go. Before Parmenides was Xenophanes, who asked the question, what is the whole of seeing, hearing, and thinking? So this is a question you can carry with you at all times in whatever you're doing. Which is curious because we've just talked about, and I need to move it over. Woof, way over here. Where did I even put them? The causes. Didn't realize I had much more. Here we go. Let's move these causes. Down over here, where we are. There we go. There we go. Do-do-do-do-do. Right, so we were talking about the dialectician who keeps his eye on the paradigm for as he functions. And this is also the case in the Republic. The Republic, Socrates puts forward the idea that, hey, this paradigm that we're seeking, the brilliant light of pure being, this is what you keep your mind on as the model, not just as a dialectician, but at all times. Because if this is beauty itself, if this is justice itself, then if you keep in your mind this as the paradigm in anything you do at all times, it'll work out. Or is likely to work out, or something along those lines. But that's justice. To keep this in mind as your paradigm for what's most beautiful and what's most just. In everything, at all times. That's the Republic. Which is interesting because the midwife keeps this paradigm in mind as well when they're functioning as they do. Same thing with the dialectician. So if that's justice, we can ask a question about, well, what's the highest way of being at all times? Are we to be doing this at all times? If justice is keeping this model, keeping this paradigm in mind at all times. Well, another thing you can keep in mind at all times that might help do that, either wonder about the nature of the paradigm or even facilitate a direct experience into it, is this question. What is the whole, from Xenophanes, what is the whole of seeing, hearing, and thinking? Not the specifics. Not the wood and the nails and distinguishing both. But imagine you viewed each moment not by distinguishing the foreground from the background to look at specific material things, but you wondered about the whole. What is seeing itself? Foreground and background together as one. Same thing with her hearing. If you don't distinguish foreground and background of hearing, what's the whole of that's hearing right now? And if you're thinking along with me as we're going, what's thinking right now? So, just that question allows you an activity or game to play at all times to see if this works. See what happens. And of course, as always, share your thoughts and experiences on the chat or in the Discord. All right, crossing the line into the self-logos way of thinking. Right, so this was all going back, so all the way going back to Homer. Even Homer, so let's, what are we talking about? We're talking about this. We're talking about the history. Before Aristotle was Plato at around 400 BC, Socrates 450, Parmenides 500, Xenophanes 550, and maybe around 900 BC. Let's say 850 for a good measure. Homer, telling us a story about the worst kind of person, Achilles, becoming the best kind of person through this art of midwifery. So, we're reclaiming our lineage, our spiritual ancestry, our spiritual birthright, our intellectual heritage, taking it back from materialism, Aristotle, and the Roman tradition. Okay, so what we want is a pathologos-free environment, ideally. So you want people who are willing to reflect in this way, in the way we have a moral imperative to do, which is to, that's what we're looking for. We do not blame. Consider parental authorities do not know what they are doing, but they do insist on their right to do it. One thing escapes them, and this is decisive. They are not able to grasp the significance of what they're doing. The significance escapes them because they refuse to look at the consequences of playing out the pathologos drama. Up a bit. Authorities then are not to be blamed, but they are responsible. They are responsible for not challenging their own pathologos. So when we're talking about responsibility, we're reflecting on the last section where it's like, hang on a second, you guys set all this up. You were lying to me. You put on this big song and dance, this big show, this big charade, so that I walk away with this false view of myself because of my love of you. I think you're great and beautiful because I'm a kid and I don't know better. Many kids never grow out of that false image. So in order to save that false image, I'm going to take the blame for your ignorance and your stupidity and your injustice against myself. Parents know they're doing it. They know they're doing it. They know no one else gives a crap about their dumb opinions, but they really want everyone to listen to their dumb opinions. Everyone wants to be Jordan Peterson, or everyone wants to be, I don't know, who's someone who people care about their dumb opinions. Elon Musk. Some preacher, your local preacher. Everyone on your street wants to be just like the local preacher, who's able to convey his own dumb, false opinions with reference to whatever religion he grew up in. And so people care about his dumb opinions instead of reading the text and learning what reading is and learning how to understand and learning how to move from belief to understanding instead of any of that. So they know what they're doing, but their responsibility lies not on that claiming here, but they're responsible for not challenging their own pathologos, and so playing that out as a zombie, eating brains of their children. So they didn't challenge their own pathologos, and they have a responsibility to purge themselves from that pernicious entity. That's the point. Otherwise, it will just play out tragically in every possible way. And so, if you're ever living with someone, you want to be creating a pathologos-free environment, because anytime you do good or show yourself or even just act in a regular way that happens to challenge their own family upbringing, their pathologos bullshit that they haven't looked at, they will try and shoot you down, try and cut you down in whatever way they learned how. And if they're really intelligent, then they were really intelligent students of this pathologos, so they have a lot of tricks up their sleeve. That sucks to be in that. In a sane, in a rational world, we wouldn't be forced to live under those circumstances as children. We'd have more freedom. Be around more people. Not be a slave in a box to the tyranny of one or two people, who themselves are just passing on their own suffering and the false beliefs behind it. You'd be able to go down the street or go to a different place or hang out with uncle, or I don't know, you'd be lots of people around. It takes a village kind of thing. So we want a pathologos-free environment. So this is what it takes to create that pathologos-free environment we all want. Which is accepting the decisive part we played in passing on the pathologos. Or if you don't have kids yet, you will play a decisive role in passing on the pathologos that will impede the development of that child, unless you play this game. The noblest game, the only game in town, because you're in it anyway. You're either doing the pathologos or you're doing the work to free yourself and becoming a master of your own destiny. There's only two options on the table. Cross the line or be a Nazi under it. And of course, not every pathologos is specifically Nazi, but Nazi was the pathologos of Germany that was preyed upon by Hitler. Just like whoever Trump is appealing to, whoever Putin's appealing to. Pick a problem caused by the pathologos. Fundamentally, the families who have been successful in this effort, hooray for them. Families who've been successful in it have been those who could grasp the idea that guilt or assigning blame plays no role in freeing the family of the destructive nature of the pathologos. This is a big one. You come home and you say, hey, this is what everyone's been doing. This is the effect. You make me feel sad when you say that. Oh, I'm just a victim. Right? What does Trump and Musk do? All the right-wing fascists? This is what you're doing. This is the harm it's causing. This is how you can be better. Oh, you make me sad when you say those things. I'm just a poor baby victim. Elon, what's his name? Not Elon. Ethan Klein. Just some random right-wing fascist content creator. Pro-Zionist. Anyway, used to be more popular with Hassan, another content creator on Twitch. Of course, Hassan broke up with him once Elon's pathologos became rampant. And Ethan is, I think, in love with Hassan. And therefore it affected him more like a romantic relationship breakup. Anyway, he's gone on a tear to try and attack everyone and anyone, even especially the best, most rational and caring, the most thoughtful and insightful content creators on YouTube and Twitch, attacking them because it's the best people who can challenge his terrible way of being. The pathologos is challenged by the logos. Other people who are dormant, sitting on the sidelines of life, or have similar pathologos are not a threat. It's the most logos-based, the most rational and caring, the most funny and charming. And there are a few people like that out there. He went on the attack against them. Just as an example, pick anyone. Who else is the victim? No one has treated a president worse than they've treated me. I am the worst treated president. I'm just a victim. Perfect phone call. Never made a mistake in my life. Won every golf tournament I played in. Call Elon Musk a Nazi for doing the Hitler salute. Oh, I'm such a victim. Right, so this is the game. They think that truth and understanding, which is necessary for development and learning, and is what caring is, they think it's the opposite of caring. They think that your use of words is to do what they do. Crush the soul, crush the learning, crush the logos, because that's what the pathologos does. They're mistaking words and human activity of the self-logos for the pathologos. So they hear blame, and they know that when they blame people, it's intimidation. It's followed up with intimidation, clip chimping, looking for one word out of context or one mistake that you've made as an excuse to inflict whatever violence they have at their capacity, like genocide. Israeli snipers sniping babies because that's the power they have. For Ethan, all his power was to use his brain-rotted audience to try and cancel people that he was upset at for speaking the truth. What if he had a nuke? What if zombie people who attack the best of humanity have nukes? That's the problem with capitalist kind of people. That's the problem. If you think that the world is just physical things, if this is your thinking, making physical things, one of the physical things you can make is a nuke. Oh, and by the way, you haven't crossed this line, so you are still a zombie in a sleepwalking stage playing out your pathologos, but now you've got a nuke. That's the game we're in. That's the human thing. That's what we have. Cross this line, baby. So, if we are demonstrating a different way of being, they will likely interpret it as blame. But blame plays no role. Doesn't help anything. Doesn't free you from your problem. To feel bad about having a problem. Why? Because your problem is that you feel bad. The problem is a false view of the self. If you believe that yourself is anything less than the divine or beyond the divine, that's not fair because it's not true. It's a false view of yourself so that you feel bad about yourself, so you have less power and can be more easily manipulated, like by priests and kings and CEOs. All of the worst people in the world. Because that's their job, to manipulate people who have given up their own spirit because they feel bad because they're carrying a bad view of themselves. It's not true. So therefore, blame just gets in the way. For that reason, and also because it's smooth brain, baby brain. You're bad, you did a bad thing because you're bad is stupid. You did a bad thing because of the pathologos. That is a human quality. That is a human, not a quality, a human feature that we're here to address. And because you are so good at being loyal to this bad thing, you did this bad thing. It's not because you're bad. It's not because you're Satan. So we have to get past that, which was the whole previous section on the difference between blame and anger and understanding and care, which is what we're doing. As a result of doing what? Realizing that guilt and assigning blame plays no role in freeing the family of the destruction of the pathologos. As a result, they in their turn come to see what they have handed down to their children. To their children, had been handed down to them. Oh, it's almost like it has a force or a power to go between generations, adding more irrationality to the idea of blame. It might be bigger than you. Bigger than what you think you are. Bigger than the you that can be blamed. Because the real you is beyond any of that. It's beyond even images. Which is interesting, because a lot of self-help says, hey, create a real positive image about yourself. Use affirmations. Even that is an insult to the self if the self is literally beyond all images and the cause of all images, and all images are all various levels of reflection and distortion of the true self, which is experiencing the whole thing, as well as somehow generating it somehow within itself. These are the questions of philosophy. The point is, you can't assign a negative adjective to the self. It's not possible. Which is a simple principle, but also a helpful one to recognize whenever we are in a pathologos, whenever we're listening to the voice of the kaka daemon, the bad daemon, the bad spirit. Our inner critic, you might want to call it. The one we listen to almost exclusively all day. And we cherish the times when we're out of it. Which is what entertainment can do, or music can do, bring you out of it. Philosophy can do permanently. Midwifery can do bring you out of it permanently, as opposed to temporarily through whatever means. By the way, even that is a communication from the mind to help you, so that so long as you've learned the language, learned that the daemon, Greek word for spirit, between man and gods, to communicate between the divine aspects of ourselves and the one that we are identified with as human beings for this period of time. The individual self communicating through the daemons to the higher self. You could say it that way. Anyway, you realize that it's not literal, but it is clues. The helpfulness of the kaka daemon that keeps you feeling bad about yourself and stuck in your problems, its helpfulness is to keep you stuck in your problems so that you don't go off achieving all of these things without addressing your problem. Because if you go off and achieve all these things, you might have all this power to pour into your problem if you're still a zombie. So you better have something keeping you from these goals until you address your problem, until you pick up the game, until you're also doing midwifery along with whatever you're doing in life. And the content of those limiting thoughts are all analogical. They're all metaphors. They're not literal. The messages about puzzle pieces you have yet to piece together. But ultimately, we don't even want them, because hopefully we want to have heard the message as soon as possible so that voice isn't there and we're able to achieve the things we want in the highest possible way, with excellence, with our mind focused on and maintained focus on the paradigm, pure mind, reality itself, so that we can function as a dialectician to ourselves and others. Or keep the question open, what is the whole of seeing, hearing, and thinking right now? So that self is the one we're talking to, and we're looking for, and we're looking to see. When we address our family members who played a role in the passing on of your pathologos, we're not talking to the pathologos. We're talking to the self. that which is beyond all of this, their true self. That's the thing that wants to be free. That's the thing you are appealing to. That's the thing you're looking to, because that's the truth of the person. And it's interesting because those that are more firmly attached to their pathologos, like, let me give you an example. We were talking, I was out one night playing music, and there was a guy there who was from a, not rich, but a more well-off family. His family had apartment buildings, allowing him to, vacation where he was at the time. And we were talking about development and how important it is to replace capitalism with a more rational and beneficial system so that we don't all die and we can stop the suffering and exploitation that nobody likes. No one can afford to live anymore except for the billionaires. Maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe it's not a good thing if no one can afford to live. Also, starvation. We don't need that anymore. Like, we throw out more food than is needed to feed the whole world. So, by definition, our system is stupid and run its course. So one kid there thought, well, I can't argue with any of those points. So what I'm going to do is try and start an argument that I'm familiar with, because that's what I learnt at home. So he says, oh, okay, so you're a real hater of capitalism, Art. That's your whole thing? No, I'm not a hater of capitalism. I am a lover of development, growth, understanding, maturity, and helping people, and helping myself. All of the good qualities, I like that. He had to reframe the argument as blame. Well, you're blaming capitalism. But what about this big building? If we didn't have capitalism, we would never have this building. So what, do you want to live in the rubble? Which is stupid. But he knows it's stupid. It's insane to say something like that. We need genocide, otherwise how will we build buildings? I don't own this building. I don't live in this building. The billionaires will own the buildings. I got to sacrifice my life to be able to live in a small section of one that I don't even own. We can still have buildings without mass wealth inequality and exploitation and genocide. We don't need those things. But that wasn't the point. The point was to reframe the context in a way where it can be a battle of blame. Because blame is stupid baby brain shit. Doesn't solve any problems. It's a distraction from actually addressing the causes. That's why fascists and Republicans and things say, oh, it's the whites, or it's the blacks, or it's the Mexicans, or something obvious that you can blame. Of course, they don't believe it. They're lying. They know they're lying. People who believe them don't know that they're lying, but that's the game. Reframe it in terms of pathologos thinking. Jump back below the line. Physical stuff. I like capitalism because I'm winning and I want to beat everyone down and have all of the stuff and laugh as their children lament the death of their parents because they couldn't afford healthcare, or because they were born in Palestine, or because they were born in, China and under extreme wealth inequality and wage slavery. I like that because I'm winning. And below this line, life is a competition of material things. There is no soul, there is no afterlife, there is no reason for me to not be the biggest tyrant in the world. They have not crossed this line. So when we are operating from this line, say, hey, these are the problems that result from this false belief about the self that you played a role in, and you're continuing to play a role in, that's causing you to be a brain-eating zombie. That's this way of thinking. Inviting them, like a dialectician, to be a material cause, not a material cause. You're inviting them to be a higher kind of cause. Open, receptive, thoughtful, mature, rational human being. That's a necessary condition for participation in this. It's how you cross the line. Entering the human race. Homo sapien, man the thinker. But we also say homo ludinus, man the player, because this is the best game in town. So what? By reframing it in terms of blame, they are rejecting this way of thinking and saying, come down here and fight me just like the way I fought my parents, or debate me the way maybe I grew up Jewish and my family, it's all about winning arguments and verbal conflict. So come down and debate me about who's right and wrong the way I grew up in my culture. Or I grew up a football player. Come fight me like all good football players. We fight to solve problems. Come down here. Or whatever. I grew up in this religion and we distract from causes and assign blame based on this game. Who can quote the more Bible verses? Or I'm a philosopher. I went to modern university down here and believed this was true philosophy. And so now I can play the blame game because the game that I learned how to play was how many European philosophers can I quote? If I quote Hegel and then Nietzsche and then I quote Kant, I will win. And nothing will change. Why? Because this was never winning. That conversation cannot create change. Its job is to stagnate and fester the ignorance behind wanting to even play a blame game. Why is it a competition between groups? Why do you have to give up your heart and your care for humanity? Why do you have to give up your head and not develop an understanding? Why are you still baby brain? Why is all that tied to the loyalty of your family and the inclusion, the image of group unity within your family group? So any of these can't solve anything, which is why every single debate, every single philosophy video or philosophy conversation or debate on YouTube is bullshit and annoying because they never solve anything. We've still got capitalism. We've still got Nazis. We've still got wealth inequality. How many more philosophy debates are you going to have? No more, because it's a debate and not a dialectic. It's down below the line. Dialectic is here. It's in the word here. It's one of these self-logos based causes, Greek tradition causes. There's no dialectician down here. Because there's no soul that you're helping down here. It's just physical things. There's no paradigm that's eternal and true for everyone. No, it's just blueprints. How to build a house. How to set up a business. How to win the stock market. So, what we have to do, and this is also the prerequisite for family members to participate in a higher way of being, play the game, accept the invitation to a mature relationship and a house free of pathologos, or a house, what does it say here? Pathologos free environment. It's leaving this game of debate, blame, crossing the line of the self-logos. You can't do it, you are a brain-eating zombie. And you have failed to do what you're here to do as a human being. You've failed in your moral responsibility. The implications of that failure, obviously the suffering of your children or whoever you have influence over, your own suffering of your soul, your inability to reach wisdom, your inability to reach the highest aspects of humanity that you're missing out on, beauty itself, justice itself, intelligence itself, your inability to grow and develop. But also, in the Phaedo, Socrates talks about, well, the consequences on your journey after you leave this incarnation. Not everyone comes back as a person. And according to the story, there are some people who don't come back at all because of how poorly or how tragically or how terribly their pathologos that they refused to look at played out. Whereas you have the story of Achilles, who was even worse than all of them, did accept this, did reflect on his functioning to find the cause without blame, did look at his dreams, did go back and talk to his surrogate father, Lord Phoenix, and find that the same thing his dad did to him, or the same life Achilles led, his dad led. In other words, it was a tradition passed on. Achilles did it, so can you. So, like Lord Phoenix, if they do accept this invitation to a different kind of a relationship, nothing to do with blame or competition or debate, but the opposite, understanding, cooperation, not cooperation, but yeah, I guess cooperation in the best kind of way. Not cooperation the way it's misused today as though, a compromise. The Democrats are cooperating with the Nazis by allowing them to, have a whole political party and then gain office. Compromise, not that. Cooperation as in friendly, mutual exploration together. If they can grasp the idea that guilt and assigning blame plays no role in freeing the family of the destructive nature of the pathologos, if they meet those conditions, then they in turn come to see what they have handed down to their children has been handed down to them. The family curse, like Achilles. In addition, they see that they were just as unaware of what they were doing as their parents had been when they passed it on. Hey, I'm just doing this. This is what we do. We've always done it this way. Now you know how terrible it is. Now you know how awful to my life it's been. Now you know how destructive it is. Oh. And your parents were equally as unaware of as you were a minute ago. They knew what they did. This is important. They knew what they did, but not why they did it. So no playing dumb. In truth, they had no realization of its effect, nor the purpose of it all. Hey, when the zombie goes out and eats the brains of the children that they love and they care for, they don't know that eating the brain and turning them to zombie has a terrible effect, and the purpose of it is to make more zombies. The purpose of it is to maintain the false idea of the self. So we talked about the self being the highest cause, maybe, generating mind itself, the enlightenment experience where mind can experience itself. Then we talked about how that functions into our world with this all-pervasive mind communicating through the logos for our benefit. So this is the functioning of the highest kind of benefit, the highest kind of intelligence and care. That's what we're tapping into. That's what we are gaining mastery of as dialecticians ourselves. Dialectician, there we go. But also it has this reflection into the reflection of the self into our pathologos family groups and our own false image of ourself. So the self can reflect down all the way down to the most distorted, most separated from the first cause, false image of the self. Just another one of the way the self is manifested in reality. That's the purpose of it all. And the purpose of it all is to maintain that guy. And draw a line here. You can have this group thinking, sure. You can feel yourself down here as a useless self. As a useless self. That's the pathologos. Let's just write it on the board. Scribbling all over the text here. That's not what a highlighter is for. My chicken is telling me off. That's not what a highlighter is for. And you know what I say to that? That's not a chicken voice. That's not what. That's not a chicken voice either. It's a duck voice. I can't do a chicken voice. But I take your point, chicken. Don't use the highlighter to scribble your pictures. Use the blackboard. Okay, chicken. So we have a moral imperative to understand and remove something. This is part of that understanding. We have the self. We can call it the one self. That's Parmenides, or the good self. That's the Republic. There might be another one. We have this. That is somehow reflected into, we talked about as the paradigm, the blueprints, but the blueprint of the self-logos, not the blueprint of a physical house. Paradigm. We can call it the experience of self. Or mind itself, or pure being, different ways of looking at it. By the way, there are some spiritual traditions who have experience of this and think, that's it. Number one, I got there. And they say this. And then they say, I don't want to eat a monkey anymore. It's the highest experience of self. So we're talking about reflection. Or generation. Reflection or generation. Now, that paradigm you say can function in the self logos. Notice the word self again. That's self logos. Which extends a divine care that we call providence. Notice providence is a care not based on that negative idea of compromise. In other words, it's giving you what is most helpful for you, whether you want it or not. If you go into the doctor's office and say, I know you're saying I've got cancer because I'm drinking too much, but can you prescribe a remedy that I can still drink myself to death? No. The doctor said, no, that's malpractice. I can't do what you want. I'm just giving you what's best for you. Most appropriate as well. So within the causes, we call that's the dialectic that allows us to share in that. The dialectic is how we share in this. Just as the reflection as the model at all times in our mind or our thinking, what is the whole of seeing and hearing and thinking, is how we can share in this. But that can get reflected the self is also reflected into groups based on the image or imitation. Imitation of self. This is the pathologos. This is pathologos groups. Also religious groups fit in this category, which are of course pathologos if you identify with them. Why? Because you're not participating. If it's belief, then you're not crossing the line. Religion means belief. Religios means to be bound by a saving belief. That's just what it means. You don't go to church to develop an understanding. You repeat the phrases as they come at you. You don't learn how to read the book in ancient Greek. It's not about that. It's about belief. So you can call yourself a Christian or call yourself a Muslim or call yourself the best Mormon in town. I only do soaking. That doesn't make you the best Mormon. Although, no. Still, maybe. I have to talk to one about it. I haven't talked to a Mormon about soaking before, so I can't make a definitive statement. But that's group thinking. And of course, someone, as a result, just as you can say the functioning of mind itself is the self-logos and providence through the dialectic. That's what we are attempting to gain mastery of. So too, the functioning of this, if this is how you grew up, if you grew up in a pathologos or a religion or a culture like that, that doesn't have the self-logos or the Greek tradition of education, then you might end up down here, which is a complete disconnection disconnection. Don't know if I spelled that right. From self and one. So let's say oneself. One self. You are completely disconnected from the one self, yourself, but also you're disconnected from any sort of oneness. Higher oneness. Even the false imitation of a sense of a oneness beyond yourself because you're participating in a group in some way is a kind of oneness. Yeah, we can't be God. That's heresy, but we can all sing how great Christians we are. Isn't that kind of an imitation? Aren't we kind of close? Feel like we're a part of something bigger. We have a oneness of our church or our synagogue or whatever. Even this is complete disconnection, is even disconnected from that sense of oneness or any connection to the self. You can wonder what would go here. I'm not going to do the whole thing for you. I'll give you something to do, to wonder about. These are expressions of the one self or of one. If you have a pure one, no parts, but just a pure one. For me to say this is a one and this chicken is a one and this flamingo is a one, I'm using the word one to describe to them, to ascribe to them as an adjective. Meaning the word one itself doesn't have any qualities allowing me to apply it to things like chickens and flamingos equally. So what is that pure one that itself doesn't have parts? all the way up here. Well, what's the highest kind of unity of all parts? Everything all at once. Well, if you had everything all at once, how would you function? What kind of a oneness would you be to be able to function in this way? And so on and so on. Reflection of different ideas of one and different ideas of the self. So we say oneself. So what? So the purpose that humans who haven't picked up on this game, or if you've gone back to the family to discuss the role of the Pathologos and the role of the family members, if they refuse to get out of the blame game because they want to fight because it's a distraction and it's a way of being that they are addicted to, then they are a zombie or a slave to staying below this line here. So the purpose is to keep you from the highest aspects of self. That, if we do philosophy, we specifically learn we are here to develop. Philosophy is this. Philosophy, the way it's taught in the Roman tradition, materialist tradition, is down here. This crossing is needed to solve problems. If we don't, as we say, the zombie Pathologos will play out its implications in tragedy. Tragedy with nuclear weapons now. So there goes our species and whatever higher role we are here to play within all cosmic life. Therefore, the imperative to cross this line. But also, individually, you have a moral imperative to cross this line. And the family members who, when you come back and say, hey, this is what happened within the Pathologos, this is how it affected me, this is what I was limited from, and by the way, this is how awesome it is if you want to play in this game. If they are willing to allow for that, to accept that, to acknowledge that, and not play dumb or be, as loyalty to this, what we just read is they don't know what they will. They knew what they were doing. They don't know the implications that we just mentioned, but also the purpose, which is to maintain this and to block this. How significant would it be to wake up and realize the purpose behind the Pathologos image of yourself that you have been identifying with and has been causing you problems? By the way, purpose, is that one of the causes? If so, go back to your exercise, your homework, if you want to think of it as homework. I don't know, it's not homework, it's fun. It's something to contemplate all the time. Hey, you're doing something, I don't know, you're washing dishes. What are you going to think about? Got options. You can listen to the Kaka Daemon, which is just going to make you feel bad about yourself and you're going to have a bad time. You can be distracted by something, or you can fall back on a question like this. What are the causes? And if I can get a complete list of causes down here, hey, maybe even better than Aristotle. I think Aristotle didn't hit all of them. Can I get a set of physical... What's going on? Can I get a set of physical causes down here? Oh. And can I wonder about what the analogical equivalent? Now we say anagogic, which means an analogy, but upward moving. Anagogic. Can I think of what the equivalent might be up here? This is something to wonder about. And create your own thesis. And share it with the community if you want. I encourage it. And if it's really good, we can have a coffee and chat about it. They knew what they did, but not why they did it. In truth, they had no realization of its effect, nor the purpose of it all. So that whole thing was a exploration as to what might be the purpose. And if we do find the purpose, could we put that as one of the causes? What would be the purpose? And what would it be its reflection? I don't know. Play with that if you want. Sometimes these questions take years to kick in. So if it didn't stick now, don't worry about it. There'll be another question that comes up. Hey, maybe even Xenophanes' question. What is the whole of seeing, hearing, and thinking? Right now, and what's watching? You can add that too. But it's there for when you want it. Clearly, those who confront the pathologos as a family gain in many ways. That's the ideal. Most importantly, they benefit because of the very willingness to enter into these explorations is evidence of the possibility for reconstructing relationships. Instead of this, sorry guys. There we go. It's reading here. Let's read that again. Clearly, those who confront the pathologos here as a family gain in many ways. Most importantly, they benefit because the very willingness to enter into these explorations is evidence of the possibility for reconstructing relationships. Hooray! This brings with it the hope that a mature, loving, enhanced by a bond of understanding. Right. So this is loving as a noun. It's the hope that a mature, loving, enhanced by the bond of understanding, may be possible within the family. Now, this will also any relationship. Like we're saying, we're in this game anyway. If you're in a relationship like a zombie, you don't know the purpose, you don't know the implications yet, well, hopefully now you're starting to get them, you will try and force your partner to be like that model of excellence. That's not the model of excellence, but the pathologos zombie virus excellence. Non-excellence. So, whether it's a mature relationship within the family, what we're talking about is a mature kind of loving relationship. Family or partner. Based on, this is enhanced by, but enhanced by a bond of understanding. So we're replacing, let's say it's a racist family, we have a bond of racism, or if it's a Catholic family, we have a bond of Catholicism, or it's a family that, I don't know, never speaks about real issues, only football. That's the way of, all of these are false images of a bond. Remember, false images. False images of a bond. We replace it by one enhanced by understanding. What's understanding? The dialectic in self-logos. What does that allow? This movement. Hey, welcome to the chat. That's the difference. And in a romantic relationship, you want this from the get-go. Otherwise, everything that the both parties are doing in the relationship is to try and impose this on the other person. So get two people from two cultural backgrounds and watch the explosions. Hey, there might be a honeymoon period. People are on best behavior or people can hide what they're doing. But this is inevitable. So what we're doing is, so just like we just read for family members, if we can accept that anger and that guilt and assigning blame and the guilt that results play no part in a healthy, mature relationship, but instead our bond is a bond based on understanding. Let's be real. It's not just understanding. That's kind of general, so it could appeal to even family members. The logos, the self-logos, that's everything above this line is reflection of the self-logos. I mean, you could say even these are reflections of the self-logos, but this is the not participation, sharing. We're not taking a part, we're sharing in the self-logos. Therefore, there's your options. Be a zombie-like slave to insist on this of your partner, while they insist of this for you as well, and so it never works. Conflict, always. You might be happy and die with that conflict or whatever. or real a different kind of love called mature love, which is based on this, where you're not insisting on, I'm certain this is what's beautiful, just like my dad when he did this, and I'm certain this is what's beautiful, just like my mum when she did that. No. Recognition that they were ignorant, and their ignorance came from their own parents, who were themselves ignorant, part of a long lineage. What we are seeking to do is reach our highest self together. It's not a conflict on different ideas. It's the same thing, which is the nature of understanding. So this also applies to humanity. In this, it's Palestinian versus Israeli. It's America versus, I don't know, everyone else. It's Catholic versus Protestant. It's Muslim versus Christian. Particular groups bound in ignorance and beliefs, fighting and killing each other forever. Until our species goes down, which is soon if we don't cross this line. Unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately. How long do we want to live in capitalism for? Let's save our species by crossing this line, hey? And if not the species, just ourselves. Do what we can for ourselves. Which does involve becoming a dialectician for those who are open to crossing this line. Nevertheless, we're either dividing against groups, be they fabricated just to become blame, like, I don't know, women versus men, or trans versus cis, or black versus white. They're just fascists and right-wingers and Republicans and things. Create those fake divisions into groups to distract from them taking all the money. Or whether it's actual groups, whether you actually believe in your bullshit. The difference is understanding can unite the whole freaking world. Everyone. That we talked about when we do this, we're not addressing the pathologos of the people we're talking to. We're looking for the self. We're recognizing the self. We're seeing that it's all the self, and we're all returning to the self. It's the only game in town to know and show the self. Meaning, this brings everyone together. No one is left behind, by definition, because the self doesn't leave anyone behind. There are still levels of development. There's not pretending. Like the accusation against from fascists against inclusivity. They think, diversity hires is not acknowledging that some white men are just better at the job than women or minorities. You're pretending we're all the same. Now, first of all, that's a lie. Just because you're a white man doesn't make you better, and that's not what diversity hire is at all. And it's a marketing campaign from fascists who are trying to exploit your ignorant beliefs so that they can fleece you from your money and your freedom. What money does. It's not that. It's not pretending we're all the same. There are still levels of development through this. There is a difference from someone who can do the midwifery, can function as a dialectician, and someone still down here. In other words, there are still ranks and development as you progress through the self-logos. The difference is, we're all in the same game. No one is excluded. If you like to give awards to people, you can give people awards for being up here. Give Socrates an award. Give Pierre Grimes an award. The point is understanding, and the self is literally what is needed to bring us all together. And bring you together. Your psychic elements. The diversity of your thoughts, your psychic energies, your activities, the goals you choose, the random thoughts you have, even the dreams you have at night. All of those are scattered and diverse in many different ways. But they can be brought together through understanding, through the self-logos, with a single focused goal, the self. And hey, mind itself, if you're aiming for the stars up here and you hit the moon, bliss, by the way, this is bliss, this is mind experiencing itself, pure beauty experienced as bliss. Hey, shoot for the stars, be happy with bliss. Of course, you're not going to be happy with bliss. When you get here, you will still have questions about its cause, or where did it come from? What does it mean? What am I? What was experiencing it? In this game, you will keep moving up the ladder beyond this, but still pretty neat and pretty awesome to have a paradigm that can be used for goodness and justice at all times and beauty at all times, not a matter of opinion or ignorance. So our psychic energy, our focus, our interests, our habits, even our random thoughts, our choice of goals and our dreams can be unified on a single goal, knowing the self and knowing the whole of seeing, hearing, and thinking, and understanding it with the self logos. In other words, this midwifery and philosophy, this awakening philosophy can unify. Now, the word that we give for the psychic elements of a human being is soul. Now, there's a question on whether or not there is literally a soul, especially if there's one self and there's one mind. Notice, one. These are all kinds of ones as well as kinds of selves. If there is only one self and one mind, there is a question of whether there are individual souls. Maybe, maybe not. But the word soul we give for the collection of all of the psychic elements, our desire for food, or our desire to act in the world, or our thinking capacity, our reasoning capacity, how we choose goals. So all of these together is the soul. We are unifying our soul. Just as the Logos unifies humanity, understanding unifies humanity. It's the only thing that can. So, as you go through your day wondering about what to wonder about, or wondering about what to think and talk and do about, see what role this game plays. See what role Xenophanes' question plays. Are you becoming more unified? And what's the result of having a single-minded focus on the self, the whole of seeing and hearing and thinking, and this curious thing called self-logos and providence that's extended to us in every way at all times, so long as we give up blame and guilt to cross the self-logos line, learn the dialectic so we can share in this, so we can go up here, and this whole process we can call new, mature, kind of loving, based on the bond of the self-logos. Lots of fun. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for stopping in the chat. Tomorrow we'll be back on the Mino. If not tomorrow, the next day, because I'll probably be playing music late. But if I can, I will be on back to the Mino tomorrow. The Mino, of course, is something that complements what we're reading here. We can wonder about one while we do the other. But yeah, thank you so much, and I hope to see you next time. And we dance. Okay. Really, bye.